Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of Chat with myself, Bryan Kearney. This is the podcast that focuses on the experience of artists within the dance scene over the past 12 months. Big thank you for all your positive feedback from the first show that happened last week. And we have a very special guest today in the form of Australia's finest Factor B. Brendan, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on, mate. Management told me I'll be speaking to Joe Rogan, but you must be the next best thing, mate. So thanks for having me.
Baby steps, man. Baby steps. Yeah, so at the first show last week, had a lot of positive feedback. People seem to really enjoy it, and they like to sort of hear sort of the background story behind what goes on in our lives on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
And it was sort of I got a good few messages, real personal messages of people and stuff they've gone through. So it's great to know that the podcast has brought some sort of support, or it's helped their mental health or anything like that in any kind of way. Yeah. So I'll leave my DMs open on Instagram. If anyone wants to send over personal stories like that, I'll get back to you, no problem. So I just want to say thank you at the start of the show for your support of the show so far.
Yeah, mate, I had a bit of a listen to you and Shugsy last week, and it's a shame that there's no subtitles that you guys can put on, because you guys speaking two Irish guys going at each other. I tell you what, I had to rewind a couple of parts. I didn't know what was saying. I mean, Shugs is all over the shop the best of times, but
what about me? I'm okay to listen to him. Okay, but fair enough about Shugs, but I think I'm all right to understand. He's on a different level.
Yeah, I love that bloke, but I swear I had to rewind it a couple of times and go, oh, okay, that's what he said. Just like all the words like blend into each other. But that was really good, mate. I mean, I obviously know Shugsy quite well, and I've been speaking to Shugsy a bit about some of those things that you guys were speaking about outside of the podcast. And it's it was good to hear it sort of in the flesh, and for you guys to be, you know, addressing some of the things that goes on, because not everyone knows what it's like. They know the basics, you know, we're not touring, we're not playing, we're not working, but the effect that it has on the creative mind when you're literally just like locked in a studio, a dark studio, it has an effect on you. It certainly had an effect on me over the past 12 months. And yeah, hearing you guys talk about it was just like, yeah, it was really enlightening. And yeah, I'm glad to be on here today to share a few of my stories as well.
And that's really good to hear, man, because when you're talking about over the last 12 months, let's go back maybe just over 11 months and to John O'Callaghan's wedding at the end of February, which was the last sort of social gathering that I was at. It was the last time that I was around a vast number of people in one setting, and to think about how much has changed and what's happened over the past in that period of time is quite scary, really. So I'd like to sort of maybe discuss how you've dealt with it and how the past sort of 11, 12 months have been for you.
Yeah, well, when was John's wedding? It was last year.
It was the 29th of February, 28th of February.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was just before my Theatre of the Mind launch show in San Francisco. So I was that, and that wasn't my last show. The last show I played was in Canada, actually, in Montreal, and that was probably in March. So halfway through March or whatever, it was starting to, Corona was starting to rear its head. And I remember thinking, oh, look, it's okay. We'll buckle down for 3-4 months and we should be able to get through it. And then maybe worst case scenario, we'll get to, August or something at the end of summer, and things will be returning. So although I was kind of like, and over here in Amsterdam as well, like it was sort of like, I wouldn't say that it wasn't taken seriously, but the Dutch were very sort of like, look, our cases aren't that high. It's not really affecting the country as it is in other places. So we sort of had a fairly normal summer here and all that. And I just thought, look, worst case scenario, you sort of have this time and then you can come back and then the shows will be back and all that. But it quickly just kept getting more and more out of hand. And it was probably by, I'd say June, July is when I really started to feel the effects of not touring, no financial stability. Even though the Dutch government came out with some support, excuse me, they didn't have support for everyone, and you had to be on a certain tier. And so my support ran out in April, I think, but I didn't get it paid until like a little way through the year, like till June. So all of a sudden you've got no shows, everything's falling off the calendar. Your finances, everything you've been planning for, you're knocking things back a month. Now it'll be okay, now it'll be okay. All of a sudden they sort of fall off the map. And then you're staring down the fact that you're like, oh, well, I'll just put all my mindset into my music. Next thing you know, you're writing all these tracks, you finish like, shit, all I want to do is play these things out. More shows are falling off the calendar, more shows are being knocked back. And I reckon I started to reach a point around July where I was like, right, I'm actually really starting to be affected mentally here. And I think there's definitely a fine line between mental health and just being sad and being affected by things that aren't great. And I would say probably for the first time in my life, that line was becoming a little bit blurred. We couldn't travel. We couldn't sort of get out of Amsterdam to do the sort of things that we wanted to do, me and my partner, that we always sort of did to keep things fresh. Because living in Amsterdam, the apartments are small and you can get sort of cabin fever pretty quickly. So we decided that we just had to get out. And it turned out that we were going to end up moving places around about that time anyway. So we took an opportunity to go and live in Croatia for, I think it was the month of August. And had I not done that, I don't know where I would have been mentally or what would have happened. It was never like, I was never in a dangerous mindset or anything like that, which I know that some people have been. But I was just exhausted from doing nothing. I know that sounds really crazy, but it's
It makes sense, man. It makes sense.
You know, you sort of get up with a purpose each day, especially as a music producer, and you go, right, I've got these shows lined up. I've got this exciting sort of vision of me standing in front of all these people and I'm going to make this track, and it gets you out of bed and you do your exercise and you have your coffee and you get into the studio before you've even put your pants on because you're so excited, and then you start working away. Whereas it was sort of like you get up and you'd be like, oh, back in the studio, I don't know how I'm going to play this stuff. And it all just snowballs into this like blur of like, okay, well, now I'm sort of losing the passion for making music because I've got so much of it. What am I going to do with it? When am I going to play it out next? And as soon as you lose touch of that, I feel like that's when you start introverting these emotions and these like mental things, because you can't, because obviously they're shutting all the bars and all the restaurants, all this stuff, so you can't go out and get like your social fix with your mates and all that. So yeah, thankfully we went to Croatia because it was open. A few sketchy moments potentially getting there, they were going to close the borders and stuff, but we got over there and ended up spending a month there before we decided to come back, and it was unbelievable. We had a little place on the water. Little budget place. I took my studio over with me because I was like, I'm going to write some music. And you know what? I probably opened up Cubase maybe 4 or 5 times. And I did write some stuff, some really good stuff that I'm still working on now. But when I was there and you're getting up to the water and the sun and like just a different environment, I think you mentally just disconnect a little bit with your music environment and your work. So it felt like a holiday to a point, and that was a huge thing for me. So stepping away from here, but it was also a huge opportunity for me to step away from social media. And as much as we rely on social media as artists, it is one of the biggest gifts that any musician or any entertaining artist or whatever has been given, you know, the connectivity. It is also the fucking devil, you know? It's the worst. It's the absolute prime thing for people, for ruining people's mental health. And what can start as something small and you can be distracted doing things where it doesn't have as much an effect, take your work away, all this other stuff, it can quickly snowball into this like, I heard you guys mention it last week. You look at your phone for this guy that you love. He's one of your mates, and he posts up some dumb shit thing about something stupid, and you just go, what the fuck are you posting that for? That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Like, you're just bored, and I just spoke to you earlier. You're not that happy. Like, and then you start going, and you go out to the other room, and you're like, what is going on? And then you're like, what am I doing? Like, why am I having these thoughts and emotions about a random picture that I've seen on Instagram or something? And times that by, 9 months or whatever it is with no shows, and you're always sort of looking like, what's everyone else doing? Is everyone streaming? Are they doing this? Like, where am I meant to be? What am I meant to be doing? And all of a sudden you're just in this, like, you're in this vortex of, like, you don't know where to go next. And 12 months later, we're still fucking there. It's even worse. I think we're going to curfew in Amsterdam as of this weekend. So it's not getting any better.
Jesus, man. I have a list of topics in front of me here that I was going to discuss with you over maybe an hour. And I think you're after going through every single one of them in the space of 4 minutes there. So congratulations.
Perfect, mate. Well, I got some beers to have, so I'll leave you to it, yeah?
No, but one of the inspirations for me doing this show was I played a gig with you in Las Vegas in September 2019, and we were staying in the same hotel, and we were unable to get a late checkout from our room before we had to go back to the airport. And myself and yourself, we sat at the reception of the hotel or
at the
in the lobby, at the bar, or whatever.
The slot machines.
Yeah, we sat there sober and with no gambling addictions, and we literally just talked for about 2 hours about literally everything possible. And I just remember thinking back to myself, Jesus, I fucking wish that I recorded that, because that would have that was an amazing listen, just to try and sort of process everything we talked about. Yeah,
it was one of the first times that we'd sort of had an opportunity to just sit down outside. I mean, we'd obviously hung out in various other places, but that was obviously before John's wedding and stuff like that. And we'd caught up before shows and spoken about all sorts of stuff, but not really when you're just in an environment where it was like, right, we got 2 hours to kill here. We're in the lobby of the hotel. And then, we sort of went down a rabbit hole of, like,
life,
a lot of stuff. Like a lot of life stuff. And it was a good chat. It was good. It's a shame that we didn't have longer in Vegas on that tour to go and enjoy some of the restaurants and the bars and stuff. But that was it's good that was an inspiration for this chat.
Yeah, it was really good because it wasn't necessarily something that I've really done with anyone else. Like, we speak to my mates and stuff, but we wouldn't really go that deep on life, you know what I mean? We sort of we talk about the normal stuff and football and all that sort of stuff, but just to sit down and chat, I think we went into a lot of different things. And the thing that I sort of noticed about you is you seem to have a lot of self-confidence. And just judging by how you were speaking and your body language, and this is just stuff that I was picking up, that you've a lot of belief in yourself. You would have a lot of confidence in yourself, and you believe in what you're saying and how you're saying it. And I'm just coming back to how the last 12 months have affected you mentally, because back then I wouldn't have felt that you were someone who would have experienced times of poor mental health. It seemed to me you were a type of person who had sort of things in check and sort of knew their own mind and stuff. But so do you feel that the last 12 months have affected you, whereas you've sort of got a little bit less belief in yourself or the world or anything like that?
Really good question. I would say, like, I come from a sales background and almost like an entrepreneurial sort of background in Australia. So over time, that's just, I guess, I don't know what you call it, a trait or a positive that I've gathered. I have my mind set on something, and then if I want to do it, it's something that I put all my mind and my energy into, and I don't stop until I sort of get to where I want to go. Obviously, there's all sorts of bumps in the road and all that sort of stuff that come with that. But that sort of mentality is what spawned me to move over to Amsterdam from Australia, like leave everything behind, leave my work behind, leave everything and start this journey. So without that confidence, I wouldn't have got to where I was. And now where I am now, I would say it's still there. It's just there's things that were thrown into the mix during COVID where confidence comes from you have a goal and like you believe you're going to get there, but you have the tools in order to get yourself there, and you somewhat know the landscape. And if you don't, then you learn about the landscape and then you adjust and you build and then you go. COVID and lockdowns, there's no blueprint for that. There's been no map, there's no preparation, there's no nothing. It's like pulling the rug out from under you. So no matter what plans I had or what goals I had or whatever, it was all just ripped out. So I almost had to reinvent ways to have confidence in myself. And I don't think the confidence ever sort of has left me read the music stuff and what I want to achieve musically. It's just my confidence in, like, I don't know how to put it, like just general life, like not having like your pillars of where you want to go next in your own control has thrown me off. Does that sort of make sense? So for someone who's always like I'm planned and then I get the confidence from the planning to have all of those pillars taken away, I'm kind of like, well, shit, if I don't have the pillars, then how do I mentally keep pushing myself through the steps that I need to get to in order to keep succeeding in life, or to keep, feeling like I have a purpose or a journey or a goal or something along those lines.
Okay, so would you say you like surprises in general in life?
I think most people do, but
okay, well,
yeah.
This is another, This is another way to look at it. Hasn't COVID been a surprise? Hasn't lockdown been a surprise? Hasn't not working for nearly a year been a surprise? So you don't really like surprises. You only like the surprises that you want. So this is where sort of inner resilience and how flexible you are as a human, and this is what I think has. I'm trying to get the words out here without sounding stupid, but this has been the test of a lot of people over the past 12 months, is how resilient they are and how flexible they are to the ever-changing situation that we're currently in. So, as you said, you were talking about confidence and self-belief. I think confidence comes when you have an inner belief, and when you're constantly doing something and you know that you're doing it to the ability that you know. But when that thing is taken away, so I'm talking about touring, I'm talking about DJ, I'm talking about performing in front of a crowd. When all that stuff is started taken away, it can, and that's probably exactly what has happened to you, where that outlet for you to express yourself and to all that type of stuff. Because I know from watching you perform, I envy you sometimes, the presence that you do have on stage, because you really, really do get into it, and you can see that.
Yeah.
Crowds love that. And I've spoken before about how I can sometimes feel very self-conscious when I'm playing. I don't feel overly. Look, listen, I don't want to sound like I hate being on stage. I fucking I love DJing. I wouldn't change this job for anything else in the world. I wouldn't change performing for any other job in the world. I believe that this is what I was meant to do, and this is what I'm doing, and I absolutely love it. But I'm just being honest in saying that there's sometimes that I get very self-conscious. But I don't think that sort of self-consciousness applies to you, because you always look like you're having so much fun. But I think I've sort of spoken to you. I think I talked about this before. It could be due to the fact that you're relatively newer onto the scene than say I am. So maybe I've spoken about it again in last week's show, that maybe I felt a little bit burnt out, and I needed to sort of recharge the batteries and come back with sort of a fresh impetus towards my job. But you do love it though, don't you?
Yeah, of course. I absolutely froth on it. It's where my music, it's all the inspiration for my music. I know I've said this before, but people probably forget how much, not people forget, but I've literally left my whole entire family, job, safety barrier of life and everything back home. So if I didn't want to do this and enjoy it the way that I do, then I wouldn't have even started with that. I wouldn't have even left Australia. I was comfortable there, living a great life, no complaints, going to all the trance shows, coming to watch you play some of my tracks and making ridiculous bets about taking my clothes off if you play them, but we can talk about that later. It's I don't know. It's something that something I thought about that you said last week. When you sometimes get a little bit afraid like your USB is not going to work, or you have these thoughts about like something going wrong. I don't know whether it's because of the industry I worked in sales. I used to do presentations to, 15, 20 people sometimes, all big, big business owners and stuff like that. When I think about that happening, it does not faze me, because if it happens, it's completely out of your control. Like if your USB breaks or a song breaks or whatever, I've seen some of the biggest artists on the biggest stages have their music cut out. And there's a moment where everyone goes, hey, and then it's like, right, and then they just restart and go again. And so when I think about that, that never crosses my mind in a negative way. I just think if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm lucky enough to have the experience of doing all these like presentations where it's literally you and you're talking and you're controlling the room and you're doing a presentation on something or whatever. That sort of pressure for me was some of the most intense pressure that I've ever felt, because not only am I in a room controlling, I'm asking all these people to invest like money into this idea that I've come at them with based on all this information and all that stuff. So they're looking at you like, do I trust this bloke? Do I want to give him my money? Is this campaign going to work? Are all these things coming up? So that for me is like a real pressure that I felt in my life. And then when you guys were talking about that last week, I was thinking, I know it's like there's more people and it's a bigger stage, and it's like, yeah, it can probably be a little bit more like scary if it does happen, but you can't control it. Like you can't check your USB beforehand. You don't know if something's going to go wrong. For me, if it goes wrong, I've almost in my mind already just thought to myself, just throw my hands up and go, fuck, it's not my fault.
It's part of the fun, really, isn't it?
It is, and that's how I see it. I literally see, after so many years on the other side of the decks in the crowd, absolutely loving all these artists that I've seen, I've always just imagined what it would be like to be in front of the decks. And now that I'm there, I'm just like, nothing can really faze me. I mean, sometimes you do get nervous before you go up on a big show, like my home show in front of 10,000 people. It's for Subculture in Melbourne. Like a little bit before the show, like the day before, I was like shitting myself. I'm playing after Key 4050 and before your debut of Kearney. I'm like, what am I going to play? Like, what am I going to play that's going to fit into that sort of space? And then I just started going, well, everyone knows what I play, so I just got to play what I play. And then, luckily enough, I had my family there, and the whole 10 of them showed up, and everyone was pissing on backstage. And literally, I'm not even joking, it was about 10 minutes before I was supposed to go and play the biggest show of my life. I'm sitting there with a glass of whiskey with my dad talking about, like, cars or something. My brother comes in, taps me on the shoulder and goes, mate, you're on in 10 minutes. So I was like, oh, fuck. How good is this? All right, everyone, let's go.
Perfect. That's the perfect preparation, because you're not sort of waiting around on the stage. But
no, that does happen though. Yeah, that does happen. So that's when it can get bad.
I think what you're saying there, it's coming back to the self-belief that you have in yourself, where you're wondering, all right, you're playing after Key 4050 and then you're playing before me. But at the end of the day, you came back to having that belief in yourself and the music that you play. And obviously you're from Melbourne, you're playing in your home city. So people know what you're going to play. So it is about having a belief and trusting in yourself and knowing that music is going to work,
Well, it's part of being a DJ as well. Like if you would have said to me, is that, the 100% Factor B sector you'd hear around the world, I'd say no. I went a bit faster. I went a bit harder, because that was what was required for that period of the night. So that was the part of doing that show, which was the unknown, and that was the challenge of it. And I embraced that. So I made my set, I had a possible 20 tracks that I was going to play in that hour. And then I just went up there, and once you drop your first track or two, you sort of start to go, well, okay, I'm getting the vibe of this now. You're watching maybe the artist before you. But on big stages like that, people, in my opinion, people want to see who's on, and, the flow in those bigger stage shows, especially with the Subculture or whatever, it's not a huge flow in terms of slower to faster. It's just, unique artists playing one after the other. And once you sort of accept that, you just think, well, people are expecting something like this, and you go and do your thing. But yeah, that was I suppose that's not the best example of like what you were saying about when you wait around for a show or you're just there by yourself. Because like I wasn't jet lagged, I wasn't by myself, I wasn't like just got out of bed after 4 hours sleep. and walking into a crazy environment where everyone's cooking it, and you walking sober and just a water, thanks, and then you get in, you get up on stage, you're like, fuck, yeah. All right, I got a lift here.
That Australian jet lag is something else. Jesus Christ, man. That's like getting 1 hour sleep before playing in front of 10,000 people is like a miracle, because it doesn't happen, you know.
Yeah, it was.
But I actually I only found this out a few years ago, but when I was about 5 or 6, I very nearly moved to Australia with my family. My family very nearly emigrated to Australia. I never even knew that until a couple of years ago.
Imagine where you'd be now, mate. Imagine where you'd be now. Mate, if you were there now, but hey, there's no COVID there at the moment. Everyone's living the dream, mate. But look at us. We're locked up in these fucking dark rooms over here in Europe.
I'd be working in sales with you. That's where I'd be.
We'd have our own company, mate. It'd be great. You know? No, I think you've done pretty well for yourself, mate. So outside of that, I mean, we just have to wait it out. Australia's moving into better and better pastures at the moment. I think they've got it pretty much under control in terms of the amount of cases and the shows and all that stuff. But
compared to the rest of the world, it's fucked, yeah.
Oh, mate, I'd love to be back there. I know where I know management are looking at some shows, and because I've got a feeling they're going to be letting Australian nationals in before they let internationals in, or at least in the pecking order. So we're keeping our optimistic minds open for maybe some shows later this year. I know there's some in the works for sort of more than just me, but let's hope that they keep going as well as they are. So there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And going back to your original question about the confidence and all that, sort of, it's been a roller coaster ride, sort of riding that confidence train through COVID. I've had to invent a lot of things myself that fill the void of not being able to, you know, grow your confidence or be sort of in the happiest place you can be. And that's been a super learning experience for me. And I can honestly say, sitting here now after almost 10 or 11 months, I've come out, even though we're not out of it or anything like that, but mentally and I suppose having more understanding of where I want to be, regardless of not being able to tour and do all the stuff that I'm over here for. I'm in a much better place with that, because I've built some things which I'll be announcing in the next few weeks, musically and stuff, which has really given me a new lease on the surprise that you were talking about, you know, because the surprise catches you unaware by definition. So it takes you a while to sort of take in what's going on. All right, well, you know, I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't really think financially I'd need to do this. I didn't think this, and this. And to the point where I actually reversed my year's worth of releases. I pulled most of my releases last year because I thought maybe at the end of the year we'd be out touring. So therefore I wanted to play some of these tracks that I've put my heart and soul into. I want to play them out live and big shows and stuff first. But again, another surprise, I suppose, that's not happening. So I've sort of rechanneled that positive energy of the music into something else. And now I'm super excited because I've got something to look forward to. I've got a few things in the works at the moment. And that's been the biggest learning curve for me. And that's why I've probably got a bit more pep in my step now than I did probably 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think you're fairly similar with your mindset and stuff as I would be, and it's just over the past 12 months and all that sort of stuff is the amount of fear that has been pumped out and the amount of psychological manipulation by the media, by the tech companies, by governments, by everyone. It's frightening. And if you don't have a self-awareness of all that's going on, of how, if you don't have sort of critical thinking and having the ability to think for yourself, to form your own opinions, and to be sort of brainwashed by everything that has happened and how it's portrayed, it can really, really affect you. So I think you're the same as me. You'll be quite open-minded. You wouldn't believe everything that you see. You like to do your own research. And that's...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to think here to get the words out correctly, but it's just the overwhelming emotion that I think that has been around in the past year is fear.
Yeah.
And coming back to the points you were making about the social media and all that stuff earlier on, like we have prehistoric sort of brains, and the current technology that's here now is far more intelligent than any human is capable of. And the tech companies are in control of a lot of people, and a lot of people aren't even aware of this.
Yeah.
And we'll go into talking about the documentary The Social Dilemma, which I discussed with Shugs last week. But some of the points from it and that I picked up on it is people in general are addicted to social validation, and I probably include myself in that, man. I catch myself falling in. I'll go in and check my insights on Instagram or wherever, like, and I'll say that, oh Jesus Christ, I've lost 30 followers in the last week. What have I done wrong? And then for that split 2 seconds, I'm just like, fuck, how do I make people like me? And then I just go, here, now, stop.
It's a natural thing though, right? Like everyone, it's the same. Like even when you're DJing or playing out, like you want people to like what you're doing. It gives you confidence that you can't generate yourself. No, musically or whatever, you can control it to a certain point. And a saying that I have up in my studio here on a board is you control the controllables. So if you can be in full control of everything that you can actually control, then taking that mindset into almost anything that we just talked about allows you to formulate or split between what is actually going to affect you and what can't. And if you can put some of those things into boxes of, well, I can't control that at all anyway. I can make the best music in the world, but if only 50,000 people follow me for it, then I can't control that. So why overthink it? But social media, and aptly explained on the Social Dilemma, is all, it's like even just having that thought for a moment and getting into your Instagram or your Facebook or something, it just leads you down a dark rabbit hole of comparing yourself. And comparison is one of the ultimate things that is, in my opinion, if you were to break it down, the biggest issue in society is everything we do, absolutely everything we do, comes down to comparison. And it could be as simple as someone posting up a picture of their studio, and you look at the speakers and you go, well, what are those ones compared to mine? Are they better than mine? Are they worse than mine? And that's on the absolute micro level that you probably wouldn't do, and neither would I, but that's where it can start. Then it can evolve into someone posting a clip of a track, and then you go, oh, well, you know, how's that track sounding? Does mine sound that good? Compared to what? Like, how are you making these comparisons that aren't actually comparable? They're just comparisons in your mind. And we're fed it on the front of newspapers. Like, I feel like even for females and women in the world at the moment, like the amount of comparison they have to deal with social influences and all that stuff, it blows my mind. It blows my mind, the power of some of these, like, you know, what is stereotypically said, hot women on Instagram or whatever. Like, you think we've got it bad. What about the girls? When they flick through, they see all these girls and their professional shoots, they're taking 500 photos just to get this one thing, and they look fantastic and all that. And then, you know, the girls are going to deal with that on a daily basis. But in general, it's like that level of comparison that we get fed through Facebook, Instagram, whatever the hell you want to call it, is the main reason that everyone just is on it all the time. They want to know how they compare to the rest of the world. Yeah, and the main problem is that when you're looking at someone's Instagram or looking at anyone's Facebook page or comparing yourself, you're comparing how you're feeling inside to how they're portraying themselves outwardly. Yeah. So you're comparing your inner world to this person's fake outer world. So here's where the divide comes. This is why you're feeling like shit. It's all nonsense. And I have some of the stats from The Social Dilemma. So if anyone hasn't seen it, The Social Dilemma is a documentary that examines the various ways social media and social networking companies
have manipulated human psychology to rewire the human brain and what it means for society in general. And here's a couple of stats that they're quite alarming. So if you have, say, if you have a young daughter or a younger brother or younger sister, just listen to these stats and just keep an eye out for them. There's been a 62% increase in hospitalizations for American females aged 15 to 19 and at 189% increases in females aged 10 to 14 due to self-harm beginning in 2010 to 2011. That's when these sort of apps and stuff went onto your phones. So
it's because of them getting on it younger, isn't it? And it's being exposed to all these things that you never really got to be exposed to from our generation, that they're now getting exposed to when they're like 12 or 13. Like, you know, you've got, you know, the good-looking chick and the whatever at school, and she's basically that's the you know, as far as you know about the social status or whatever, and your world is, you know, your neighbouring schools and your friends of friends and your circle of friends and all that. Now, these young girls and guys, whatever, 12, 13 years old, they're going on and seeing like influencers like, who is they, Kylie Jenner or whatever they are, who are worth, what, hundreds of millions of dollars each, with plastic surgery and all this shit. And it's, I can't imagine what it must be like for young people in today's. I feel
so sorry for them, man. I really do have a lot of sympathy to be a young person growing up now. It's absolutely horrible to be going through all this stuff with social media, and then especially for kids now going to schools, wearing masks, seeing the fear in probably their parents' eyes, just the overwhelming sense of fear. It's horrible. I really do feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Because I'm just glad that I grew up when I did, and I sort of had my childhood and going to school before all this stuff was around, and I feel really grateful for that I was able to live my life normally and without this pressure, because school and growing up and being a teenager, that could be difficult enough. But when you add in the pressures of all this stuff and that is the pressure of being a teenager, right? Yeah, and their brains haven't developed.
Your comparison when you're young is the biggest thing. Who's the king of the schoolyard? Who's the best footy player? Who's getting all the girls? Who's doing this, that, or whatever? Who's old enough first to go and blah, blah, buy booze or whatever, go to the strippers or whatever if you're a bloke. Now, it's like the comparison is at school, and then the comparison is even stronger at home because they can constantly just see what everyone's doing. And then I'm sure now it's crossed over from real life into school life because of social media. You know, like social media, in my opinion, is driving more of the behaviour with young people than ever before. And it bleeds into everything. And bringing it back around to maybe music now, like I think we were chatting in Vegas about this. You were like, who are the next young producers that are gonna come through in niche markets or niche genres like trance, who are gonna have the patience and gonna have the time and the ability to actually care enough to want to learn how to make the music or do all that stuff, you know? Like there's a big thing with like EDM and like, say, the Martin Garrixes of this world. They give a lot of inspiration for young people to be like, oh, okay, well, I could be like that, even though that's like a whole nother level. But in the, say, the trance realm, like generally anyone who sort of comes through, and from my own experience breaking through with trance, I mean, I'm not new to trance. I'm new in the sake of the last 3 or 4 years. But I've loved and listened to trance my entire life. Like I'm 20 years into listening to trance. I got into it when I was like 12 or 13 or something. So all of that love for the music and all that sort of stuff sort of built itself up to a point where I learned how to make music and do all that stuff because I didn't have all these other distractions and all these other things in my life. I just sort of liked what I liked. There was no social media and all that. But in today's society, if someone sees that something's too hard, and the statistics say this as well, that more people are like, as soon as things like in the sales industry, especially in Australia, there's a lot more people not going for sales jobs because you have to pick up the phone and do cold calls. And no one wants to hear rejection anymore because they get enough of that self-loathing, rejection when they see someone on Instagram or something that is doing something better than them, and they're constantly with their FOMO and all that. There's a level of rejection that's constantly built into the social dilemma. And now they are saying that there's less and less people wanting to put themselves into job types that require a lot of persistence, a lot of like knockbacks, a lot of negativity and hard work. And what sort of world is that going to leave us in 15, 20 years, you know?
But at the same time, like, that's always been said. Oh, what's the world coming to? The world's changing, but the world is always changing, man. Like,
that's true.
The same thing happened when our parents were teenagers. All that stuff was happening. You always adapt, and it always. I think like the way to look at it, we're always fucking gobshites. Humans, we're learning all the time. Like, I look back at some of the stuff I did a month ago, and I go, "You're a fucking idiot. What are you doing?" Or a year ago, or anything like that. Like, we're humans. We're constantly like. And you try and think now and say 50 years when they look back at how everything has been handled over the past year, they're just going to go, what were they at?
Yeah.
But like, that's humans just try and adapt as best they can, and they're learning all the time. Yeah. And we're always just learning all the time.
Yeah, of course. But this is probably the first time in human history, like you said with the stats earlier, that behavior is being drastically affected by external sources,
by technology,
at such a young age. Yeah, by
like, I'm not trying to sound like, but like this was predicted in the Terminator in 1984.
Favorite movie.
The machines are coming, man. They're in control, and sort of this. Yeah. I am laughing about it in a way, but AI, artificial intelligence, and all the stuff that they're more intelligent than any human can possibly ever be, and all the it's just going to get smarter and smarter. And unless you have
Elon Musk has said that, hasn't he? Elon Musk has actually said, even though he's working with the AI stuff, he's like, it needs to be regulated now. Otherwise, it's going to get to a point where it's exploited and something fully fucking cooked could happen, like Terminator. Yeah. You know, like, it is actually possible, which is crazy. Also, on that, with all this stuff happening in the world, the US government has basically come out and started saying that there is, like, they have actually announced that they have a full program investigating UFOs. And it's not making anywhere enough news as it should. And all this stuff is going on. I mean, they might have technology already, like, that they've captured from crashed crafts or something. Who knows?
Right,
like, there's so many things going on in the world, but it's, you know.
Right. Let's go a little bit deeper, man. We've been a little bit too serious. Let's go deeper in on some questions about the universe and what's out there and stuff like this. I think we discussed this sort of stuff before, but do you believe in aliens?
100%.
So do I.
No question.
If the universe is apparently infinite, how naive can anyone be to think that we are the only people here? There's probably people looking down laughing at us right now at what we're doing. Absolutely. Like, I always like I don't know if there is other life forms or whatever, but I'm not saying there's not.
Yeah,
I'm open to it 100%.
Well, I don't know if you follow this stuff. I actually have a great interest in this because I feel like in some warped out mindset that I've had, that if proof of aliens is like, or crafts and stuff is proven beyond doubt, it means that humans are not the most important thing in the universe. And shock horror, that's going to change everything, because people are going to go, well, what's the point of governments? What's the point of all these things? And it's going to be a really interesting conversation. But this is what I'm saying. The US government has literally come out and said that they have been studying unidentified crafts. The footage is online, and it's from the government. It's government footage. It was captured by...
I just
I'm going to like Joe Rogan territory here.
Yeah, no, man. It's just...
but it's actually out there. Like, it is there.
I know in general you need to have evidence of something to prove something, but
Yeah.
when it comes to something like this, you can't just say there's not, because if it's infinite. And I think we talked about, like, do you believe in, say, reincarnation or anything like that? Because this, man, I think about this sometimes and it scares the shit out of me. I'm like, right, what happens when you die? Is that it, or does the cycle never end, or what actually? Do you ever have these thoughts, man? Because sometimes I do, and I find them quite scary, because I started listening to stuff about quantum physics and all last year, and absolutely, it blew my mind, man. I can't remember what it was about, but it was like, it's all about consciousness, and I can't remember the thing it was, but it was like, does anything truly exist until you're conscious of it? So say if you walk out of your house and you walk down the road, does your house actually exist until you turn around and see it and you bring it into your consciousness? Oh man, it set me on this spiral of like, why did I listen to this? I'm not wired to listen to stuff like this. I should be listening to the easy stuff, not this type of stuff. But it can't blow your mind reading stuff like this, man, because it's a little bit unsettling now, but it's quite interesting as well.
Let's be honest, everyone, I'd be confident in saying everyone at some point has thought about what happens when you die, right? Like, is it all black, or do you just pop up in some other thing? Or you hear these stories, and there's some Netflix documentaries on people that have clinically been dead, and they say that they go into this like different parameter of space and time, and they see themselves from outside their body and all that shit. No one knows. It's interesting to hear about and read about and stuff, but I don't give it a lot of thought on a daily basis. I probably will when I'm a little bit older, and I think as our parents, I don't know, I've never met your parents if they're still around or whatever, but as they get older, I think I start to think about that a little bit more, because it's a little bit more real. But I don't know, if you start thinking about that on a daily basis, then
oh man, it's not daily at all.
All there, Brizzle.
I haven't thought about that one in a long time, but just sometimes these mad thoughts just come into my head sometimes, and it's just a little bit unsettling, because
do you reckon that plays into why you have these mad thoughts when you're playing? Like,
I don't know. I don't really know. I think people in general try to distract themselves from the fact that every single one of us in life is going to die. Every single person you know and love and have ever loved and have ever known in your whole life is going to die. And I think people try to run away from the fact that, and I don't know why, because it's I'm not trying to sound like Elton John here, but that's the circle of life, man. People are born, people die. That's what life is. And like, you're there talking, like, today is my father's, we're recording this today, it's my father's 5th anniversary since he died.
Right.
So I've no problem speaking about this stuff. I've found it, I've gone through at times over the past 5 years, I've found things very, very difficult. I've gone through the various stages of grieving, and I have found it very tough. And I'm not going to go into it to discuss this today in length, because I have a guest coming on in the next couple of weeks, and it's a topic that I really want to go into and speak to, because especially with a year like this year, obviously a lot of people have gone through a lot of stuff. They've probably going through bereavements and grieving and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to make light of it or anything like that. I'm just giving my own opinion, and it's just I'm speaking from my own experience over the past year. There's been things that have happened to me, and just things that I've gone through in general, where, like, I spoke about last week as well, whereas I feel like I have a new perspective on life, where I just get on with it, man, where every day is a day, and you just do what you can do, you know?
Well, it's a really good point. And again, going back to what you said at the start about the roller coaster and where I'm at now compared to where I was, it's the perspective of, for the first probably 6 months, I was, okay, damage control, things are going to come good. And then I like to sort of have a joke about, there was, for us, me and Ellie, my partner, there was pre-Croatia, post-Croatia, right? So pre-Croatia was leading up, and we're like, fuck, what's going on? How are we going to get through this? We need to get out of here, reset, whatever. When I was in Croatia, I shut my socials off, shut everything off for the month, and basically set myself some mental tasks of like, right, when you come back to Amsterdam life, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? Because you can't go back to what it was before that. And how are you going to, and what things are you going to put in play to make sure that, you know, you don't fall back down that rabbit hole. And then so coming back from Croatia, I changed everything around. I went from everything being doom and gloom to I'm not going to waste this time. It's happening whether I like it or not. And I can either sit here and sook about it and do whatever, or I can continue to dig into my savings and just forget about it, you know, and just do what I can and make the most that I possibly can. And that has snowballed in a good sense to the point where, like I said, I've got these huge projects that I'm working on now. I've never been more inspired. I've never been more excited. I'm still like chomping at the bit to get out and play some shows and do that, like everyone is, but I can't, and that's fine. I'm fine with that now. I'm content with it, and I'm making sure that I achieve something every day, as small as it is or as big as it is, and then have a goal to work towards. This project's going to be a great undertaking for my music. It's launching a whole new type of business for me, so revenue, income, all in a real positive light. And it's given me a whole new lease of understanding of not wanting to waste the time. It is what it is, and you can't change it. And I think Shugsy was mentioning this. It's like everyone's dying to get back out there, but you just kind of have to make the best of what the time is now. And I think, like you said at the start about the confidence thing, I've definitely got that confidence back of, right, this is something that I'm super proud of. This is something I'm really confident that people are going to enjoy if they enjoy what I make and all that. And that's just turned into all sorts of other things. I'm back doing like lots and lots of exercise, even though they've shut the gyms, which is another topic we could talk about, exercise and health and well-being and all that stuff. But like, the gyms are all shut here, but now like I'm back to running 100 Ks a month and loving it. Like I ran a 10K before this because I wanted to be switched on mentally. I wanted to be ready to chat and working on music beforehand and stuff. And it makes such a difference. And having those goals set in play, whereas before that, it was just like, okay, if I just eke my way through this day, then tomorrow will be better without actually taking control of it. Whereas now I flip that on its head, and I'm happy to say I'm proud of myself for finding that, because it took me a while to find it, and it took some dark days, and there's still some dark days. It's like I said before, like you're always going to have some dark days, like whether you're on top of the world or not. In fact, history would show that people who are more on top of the world have darker days. 100%. So I'm happy just sort of being right there in the middle of just being happy.
This is how you grow. You grow from being challenged by going through these hard times. And I honestly feel like from everything that I've experienced and everything that has happened over the past 12 months, I don't want to jinx things, but I honestly feel like anything could happen and I'll be all right. I feel my resilience and
that's a huge point. Yeah, if you can get through this, literally, as a musician, as a creative,
this is the most challenging era of time that any of us alive will probably ever go through.
And brother was saying that comparing to the war. This is like our wartime. Now, you never compare people actually. We're not in war. We're at home in our fucking houses. So it's not. I'm not actually comparing it to people having to go to war. But it's like the wartime. It's like complete uncertainty. World's unstable, etc., and there's huge financial implications to everyone, which is associated to those times.
This is the type of point I want to come back to with all the terrible stuff that's happening over the past year, and it's all that we are hearing about. So we're being conditioned non-stop by the news, by the media, by social media.
Yeah.
They're condensing the world's suffering they're taking the world's suffering, condensing it, and you're getting it pumped through your eyes, into your ears, non-stop. And if you don't practice like self-awareness and taking ownership of how you're responding to what's happening in your own life, you can't control if people are dying in America, Australia, all over the world. Like, people die every single day. There's nothing you can do about it. The only thing you can do is to be self-aware. Take ownership of how you're responding to what's happening in your own life on a daily basis. You've no control over what happens in the world. You always have control about how you respond. And I want to use the word respond. I don't want to use the word react, because the react is a real it's an inflex thing. Respond has a bit more, you're taking a breath and you're assessing what you need to do it. So we need to, people need to understand their natural strengths. They need to increase their self-awareness, and you need to increase your critical thinking and the ability to think for yourself, because there's so much information being pumped out at the moment, man. Like,
it's hectic. But mate, so what's the answer then? Like, if you want to go a bit deeper on it, what is the answer to that? I mean, a lot of us, like we've discussed, like turning off social media seems to be a good start for most people. But I know I have to go into social media overload, but like when I launch all this stuff that I'm going into, I'm going to have to go right back into it. I'm already starting to get some things moving or whatever. So I know I have to go back into it, because it's the only way we can get things out of it at this point.
I know that I've been speaking about social media. I'm not saying it's evil or anything like that. All I'm saying is it can have a very negative effect on your life or on your kids' lives or anyone. It can affect people badly. That's why I'm speaking about having a self-awareness, and just to be aware and take ownership of what you're doing with. Sure. So, like, don't get me wrong, like social media and platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, they're massive parts of how I present myself in my work and stuff. So I'm not having a go, but I'm just saying to have a self-awareness, to don't let it consume you. And I feel that social media is a tool that you use, and you should not let it use you. That's the way I would like to put it across. I'm not having a go at it. It's brilliant what it does. It connects so many people over the world. It gives me a chance to put a set up, and people from all over the world who I'll probably never meet in my life can hear me and see me. And that's brilliant. There's some fantastic things to do with social media. It's just the psychological impact it can have on you if you're not aware of it. That's all. As humans, we're still learning how to actually use social media. And I think now that it's been around for maybe 10 years, quite proper, people are starting to see the effects, both sides of it. And people are more than ever now starting to take breaks. And more than ever, social media platforms are starting to build ways to keep you more engaged, as per the social dilemma. Yeah, because I'm sorry to interrupt you, because this is to do with you. It was when I was speaking to you in October, you were after saying you were away in Croatia, you deleted all your apps. I was actually watching that documentary when you were talking to me, and you were explaining to me about how you just took the decision to disconnect, and it had a really profound effect on it had a really good impact on you mentally. And you need to understand that there's a connection between your mind and your body, so it's psychological and physiological as well. So when you take a break, it's just, our brains aren't designed to take so much information in on a daily basis. And like you don't realize how much information is being taken in when you're on your phone and all this all day. So take a little break. Like there's a couple of little things I've started doing. So say at like 9 o'clock at night, I turn off my notifications on my WhatsApp. I put my phone to the side, and I don't go on it until say 9 o'clock the next morning. The only time I go on it before that is when I wake up in the morning and I sync my Fitbit. And me and you are in Fitbit challenges and stuff like that. And you're just after saying you're going on a 10K run. What steps are you on at this moment in time? Before we go back into the serious stuff.
I'm sitting on just over 11,000.
What exactly?
11,302.
I'm on 11,371.
No way. But you know what? The Fitbit can be a little bit misleading, because I ran a 10K before, and that would suggest that, I mean, that's obviously a lot of a stronger output. So I'm actually a running thing. What's really helped me as well, just off topic a bit, I've got some boys here in Amsterdam. We've got like the Nike Run group fit thing going on. Just that simple thing alone, seeing your other mates running and tallying up your monthly Ks, gets you up and about. Like, we all get around each other, and it's like, oh, he's just run a 5, he's just run a 7, he's run and like, it's little things like that which are really helping people. And that's another topic as well, how people have actually banded together during the pandemic and all that sort of stuff. Musicians and stuff, like we've spoken a whole bunch of times, but normally we just reserve our chatting to when we catch up on tour and whatever. So there's been a lot of real positives going back to what you were saying. And going back to the social media side of it, I couldn't agree more. I think people now more than ever are learning to adapt and not letting social media control them. And as long as you put certain things in play that allow you to control the controllables, you will be able to get all the benefits of social media without having to have the dark side of it. And I've got a good mate here, Roman is his name, and we were sitting down the pub for the short period of time in summer called the Water Cunt. It's a great place here on the water. And we were talking about social media. He's into advertising and marketing and doing creative and all that sort of stuff. So he deals with all these companies who are deeply involved with socials. And I was talking to him about this sort of stuff. And he goes, look, we can talk about this all day, but factor, it's here. It's not fucking going anywhere. You just have to get used to it, and you either adapt or you die. And no one had ever really put it that blunt to me before, even though deep down I knew that was the case. But you have this like natural instinct to fight it. Like, fuck you, Facebook, I'm not going to scroll through this or that or whatever, you know, like you're the devil. And it was sort of this moment of like, spin it on its head and use it for the best possible reasons that you can. Be in control of it. Know when to draw the line. Stop looking at things that you, like we said about comparison, like, because none of it makes sense. And even like the ASOT 1000 countdown was last night. That is a great example for people to get an understanding of how musicians are constantly thrown into these realms of comparison. How do you compare yourself to a countdown like that if you really saw yourself as, oh, I think I'm one of the best producers in the world, or even just like tune of the year each year? And what if you don't get to where you want to be in all of those types of polls that come out each year? It can be a really positive thing, or it can be a super negative thing, because if you don't achieve what you like, the emphasis that you place on those things, you can go down a real bad place.
Yeah, well, I've had personal experience of that, man, because my track came number 2 in 2017 all over again, and I was gutted.
Yeah,
it was, you know, and it wasn't because I wanted to beat anyone. It's because I wanted to fucking win.
Yeah, yeah. But that's it. You're into footy. You're a sports guy. Like you want to win, and I've got a sales background. I want to win. Like I want to win. But when you first come into the industry, I had such a reality check of just like, dude, you want to be this. You want to be playing all these shows. You want your diary full. You want all these things happening for you all the time because you feel like you deserve it. But the truth is, you don't deserve shit. You're just part of the system. And you get what comes to you when it comes to you through hard work and everything else. So not to say that you didn't deserve the number 1 spot or anything like that, but if you place this emphasis on it, it's like you can't control that to a point.
No,
you know?
I know I can't control it, but I'm just giving an honest thing where I was gutted that I didn't win it, because that type of track is like it's a once in a lifetime until I probably do it again. Like so. Yeah. If I ever will, I don't know whether I'll ever have a track like that again. You don't know. Like those tracks don't come around too often. But I am a competitive person, man. Like even we've been doing like Zoom quizzes and stuff over the past year. Yeah. I want to win every single one of them.
Yeah, but that's healthy.
That's just how I am. I'm a competitive person, and I want to win. Who the fuck likes losing?
Yeah.
Why would you want to lose?
Well, there's some people who would rather not participate, so they don't have to face the loss. And that's a huge thing. And that's what I think social media projects a lot of that as well, which is another avenue you go down. Like with social media, no matter how good, no matter what happens, and again, going back to the polls, like for a tune of the year, a track becomes top 5 or whatever. No one, 2 weeks later, the reality is no one remembers it. No one cares. It's always what's the next big track? What's the next single? What's the next album? What's the next this? What's the next that? That's fine. That's just moving with the times. But as a new artist coming into the industry, I was like, oh, okay, it must be like this. And then I was like, very quickly was learning like, oh, okay, no one really cares if you've had 10 Beatport number 1s. No one really cares if you've got 1 million Spotify plays. These are all things that they happen to you. You fucking love them. You take them on board. You use them for your confidence. and just be fully prepared to accept that a week later, someone else is going to have 1 million plays. Someone else is going to be number one. You still have the competitive edge, but it's the adaptation of the mentality towards the environment, which is music, which ultimately is a whole group of collective artists who are supposed to be making music that is as different as possible to the next person, but we're being forced into a box where you have to be compared to the next person constantly, and it's almost forced music in so many ways to become the same. And I feel that was one of the main reasons, like, people say, oh, trance is all sort of becoming the same, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's the case, but I can see why people think it. Because from a peripheral vision, you can see there's a box that people are trying to fit themselves into, which is against the whole idea of artistry.
I have a story that's going to sort of tie in with that point, but in the first episode last week, I gave you a story about how I reversed my car into my house, and I knew that's how I started my year. But I have something similar, but not as drastic. But so it was New Year's Day morning, and we were bringing the dog for a walk. So we drove out to the beach, and we were literally only after leaving the car, and we were walking down the path, and the dog had to go to the toilet. But unfortunately, after he went to the toilet, he left a little bit around him, so it was a bit dirty. So I had to go back to the car to get some toilet paper or some tissue that I had in the car to clean him.
Yeah.
So as we were walking back, walked down off the grass, I slipped, went flying, landed on my arse, and I was covered in muck, right? So I had returned to my car to get some kitchen roll tissue that was in the boot of my car to clean the dog, and I ended up having to clean my own arse more than the dog. But this ties in. I'm gonna bring it forward.
Yeah.
Ever since then, my tailbone, the bone above there, has been sore, and right. This will all make sense. Trust me. Just hang in there and let
the one for the alien story to come in a moment.
No, just hang on in there. I promise you this goes somewhere, right? So the Tuesday night before this podcast was going to go live on the Wednesday, and I woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be sleeping pretty well before this. So I was sort of sleeping through the night, getting maybe 7-8 hours. But I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I had the pain from when I fell, and this thought went into my head going, why are you doing this podcast? You're going to show yourself to be vulnerable. You can't do this. And I couldn't go back to sleep. So I was awake all day, and then I don't drink caffeine anymore. So I always get decaf coffees, but I was so tired on the Wednesday morning that I made the mistake of getting a coffee, and I was absolutely rattling all day, right? So I'm on edge, and this is the day that a very personal podcast where I'm speaking about stuff that I've never spoken before is going live, and I'm just like, why did I do it? You shouldn't have done this. Should have just keep this stuff to yourself. Don't tell anyone, and all this sort of stuff. And then I woke up the next night, similar story, but I slept a little bit better. But I woke up just with this sense of anxiety going, oh no, what have I done? I've opened up too much here.
Yeah.
But then this more rational, logical thought came into my head, and it goes, no, you haven't. You're just speaking honestly about stuff that's personal. And then I started thinking that everything on Instagram, on social media, anything that I've put up before has always been to show how brilliant I am, how talented I am, how strong I am, how great I am. And this is the opposite of it. And the fact that I was doing something different, it scared me.
Yeah.
And once I sort of processed that thought, I felt a lot better. Yeah. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, it is like, I really appreciate you coming on and speaking to me today about stuff that's personal to you, but like, there's so much pressure for everybody. Like, I'm nearly 38 years of age, and I still feel like I need to impress people all the time, and just to show people how great I am. So the fact that I'm coming on here and talking about this stuff, I've no problem showing people that I'm vulnerable, that I'm not a flawless person. I'm a human being with faults that's constantly working on stuff that
Absolutely.
struggles at times. And I think people, that's what people want to hear. They want to hear real stuff. They want to hear the stories behind the shite, the music, all that type of stuff. So
I think
I'm glad I did it, you know.
Yeah, it's so true, because I think we're definitely at a point now, this from my perspective, that social media, and we've talked about this, going back to social media, it has become a place of like, it's a fabricated life that people like to post about, because people want to show other people what they're missing out on, because that's how we're sort of built. We want to look at it and go, right, this guy's a DJ. I wonder what that feels like. I want to follow him. I want to know more about him. I want to know all these things. And there's guys that I follow, and I just see over the years it's getting more and more, through lack of a better word, desperate to be more and more like, hey, this is me doing this. This is me. I'm going for a run, but I'm going to get someone to stand there and film me from a special angle, so when I run, it's going to look great on social media.
Yeah.
Now, to a normal punter, it's like, you're going for a run. It's not a big deal. But to these mindsets, it's like they're feeding the system of, you want to show people more and more of this amazing lifestyle that you're leading, and it's getting further and further away from what people's lives actually are. And then I feel like there's been a bit of a shift maybe since COVID. People are starting to go, well, I don't have any of this bullshit stuff to post anymore, because everyone knows that we can't tour and we can't play. Some people have continued it, and that was the thing that was fueling my, I suppose, mental anguish towards it. I'm looking at stuff, or stuff's coming up on my feed, and I'm going, that's not real. Why? Why are you posting that? Like, can't you just be more real about your life and what you're doing? It's pretty miserable out there, and it's okay to be miserable. Although no one wants to post stuff about being miserable, you know. Like we joked about the other day, putting up a photo of the vacuum cleaner, and just like, here's my day, here's my morning.
I did the hoovering earlier on. I actually should have taken a video, but I have far better content to go up online.
No one gives a shit about you vacuuming, but that's what you're actually doing. So by you doing this podcast, where I'm going to with this, you doing this podcast, and the reason why I was well and truly up for coming on is because this just absolutely breaks down the social boundaries of like what we're supposed to be like on social media. And look, I would say that I put a lot of, effort, but like I always try to maintain a very level-headed approach when it comes to social media. I don't think I have a single post of me like, you know, hey, going for a run or doing this or whatever. If it's interesting content to a point, I'm well up for doing it. But most of my social media stuff is based around the stuff that people really want to know about, which is like, what's it like on tour, or a new track, or something I'm working on in the studio. And I like showing people that side because it's real. It's not me pretending to be something else. During COVID and all that, that's why it was so important for me to shut down. Because if I was to look at my phone and think, oh shit, do these people, are they thinking about me? Like, where am I? What am I doing? Like, do I need to keep my content up so people stay more engaged, so when things return, they haven't forgotten about me? Like, fuck, they're going to forget about you, for Christ's sakes. People are on their phone 6-7 hours a day, you know, like one post, and these are the things that you've got to retrain yourself to think. And at the end of this all, I'm so proud that I haven't gone down that route, because now there's almost like an expectation for people who have followed that sort of route with social media, that they've constantly got to be putting things up each day. Now, the opposite side to that is, if that's what helps them get through this time, and if that's what makes them happy, then there's nothing wrong with that at all. So
yeah, absolutely, man. Who the fuck am I to judge? Who am I to judge anyone for anyone? Yeah. I'm one person out of 6 billion people on the planet. My opinion matters no more than anyone else. I've no judgment towards anyone.
It's important to know that, and this is what I mean by adapting and controlling it. So if I looked at subject A and I was like, why the fuck are you posting this stupid thing? Instead of me getting anxious or annoyed about it, saying, mate, you're not happy. I know you just had 10 shows cancelled or whatever, or blah, blah, blah. Or I know you've just, your wife's just lost her job or something like that. I know you're not happy. So what's with the whole blah, blah, blah? So the adaptation is, okay, remove yourself from that. You can control it. It's whatever that person's doing it for is obviously for a reason, whether it's positive to them or negative, it doesn't matter. But if it starts to affect the way you are and your mood or however you see it, then that's a problem. And that's where through COVID, I would argue like the reason why you've done this podcast as well, we've come out the other side with a far better understanding and appreciation for the realness of what we're doing. And I think that's a super positive, man. I don't think you should second guess it at all. I know, well, by the sounds of it, you're doing more podcasts. I mean, I don't know how anyone's going to top this one, mate. This is going straight to iTunes #1. There's no question. But you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't say this is everyone's cup of tea. I mean, the guys who download Bryan Kearney's biggest tracks and Factor B's whatever's, I mean, this might not be their bread and butter.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. People's attention spans probably won't last. Man, this podcast it's going on. This podcast is actually longer than one of your breakdowns at this stage.
I was going to say, mate, you have got the right audience for this podcast now, mate. We're starting to get into the breakdown territory. We're almost at a drop of one of my tracks. So
yeah, one of your tracks, yeah.
They're going to listen to
1 hour long breakdown, yeah.
They're probably going to come to the conclusion that this is pretty much just like listening to one of my tracks.
Yeah.
Boring and ongoing.
Not at all, man. Not at all.
But that's good, mate. I think I don't think a moment should go past where you don't think that doing something like this is positive. And I would encourage anyone else who's thinking about doing something like this. I spoke to you before you launched this about I wanted to do something not quite like this, but a music-based podcast where I would potentially have some guests on and we talk about, stuff like we have, but personal things about the music. Which I think people are really, really interested in these days. Everyone wants to know more stuff behind the music. There's a great documentary, it's like a little docu-series that Twan does on some of the biggest tracks released.
Yeah, they're really good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's good.
All the guys and you learn a little bit more about them behind the scenes. And even that's not only interesting to the people listening, it's interesting to the producers. Finding out how Ferry Corsten wrote the melody to Out of the Blue or what inspired Armin to write Communication, like I sit there and eat that shit because it's like there's no makeup, there's no 25-foot stage or 100-foot stage around him and this giant phony thing. It's just a dude sitting in a room going, this is how I wrote this track. And he doesn't know the effect that it has on guys like myself, inspired a generation of people to make music. And just to see the rawness of the discussion, it's fucking brilliant.
I think we discussed, I think we had a chat on the phone last year and we sort of discussed this. Like 2020 showed us how irrelevant and relevant we are at the same time. We're irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. Every single person is. When you think about it, and I don't mean to sound like disparaging or anything like that. It's supposed to be liberating. I mean, don't take things too seriously. Things don't last forever, so make the most of it. But at the same time, like I have received a lot of messages from people saying, "Oh, your music and your sets have helped me get through these lockdowns and all that sort of stuff." And I really appreciate that. So I'm really glad to hear that.
I had a little bit of I suppose the opposite side to the coin of that. Some friends of mine back home were actually saying, we've loved what you've done, because I was really like, I don't have the setup here to be able to do some streams from home. And I was getting it all the time. Oh, more streams, more this and that. And I ended up doing getting some really cool ideas off the ground with the boats around Amsterdam and a morning session at the Rijksmuseum. That was really fun and inspiring for me to do. It was like a challenge. It was cool. I was launching my new alias, Highlander. And it was like something really cool to do for these streams, to put music out there for people. But once I sort of lost the ability to do that, the weather got shitter. I went to Croatia for a month and all that. The inspiration for me to do that really just died off. I was like, it's not really getting me up out of bed for it. I don't have the studio set up at home, and I've just sort of left it for a while. And I was getting messages from people saying, "Hey, mate, you should do some streams. You should." And I'm like, no. And they're like, "But think about the effect that it has on other people. Like, think outside. Like, you have the ability to put a set together and people will love it, and it might help them through the day." And that just twisted it all on my head for me, and it's helped inspire what I'm going to be launching in a few weeks' time as well. But it really flipped it on its head and made me think about we're in a privileged position to have enough people that like what we do to give us a lifestyle where we can create and make music and do all this stuff. And at the start, honest to God, mate, when you were doing your streams, I was like, oh, why are people doing streams from kitchens? Why are people doing streams from bedrooms? Like, I get it, but will it keep going on? And by the end of it, I'm completely flipped on it. I'm like, everyone should be doing more streaming. Everyone should be doing whatever they can. If they want to do it, do it. Like, don't overthink that people, like, that you have to do it. If you want to do it and you enjoy doing it, I mean, I know you don't enjoy probably doing streams in your kitchen as much as you enjoy playing in a club or a stadium, but that's the adaptation for the moment.
Do you know what, man? The vinyl one I did, I absolutely loved that. That was brilliant. Loved it. Adapting to something that you enjoy and going deeper into that, I have rediscovered so much that I love about trance and about music in general. And when everyone was posting up their Spotify numbers and all that, I had the best year on Spotify I've ever had, but I didn't really care about sharing, my listens and all that. What I shared was I discovered something like 180 something or more than that new bands on Spotify or new artists and stuff. I've just been going down rabbit holes, all these progressive artists and all this stuff, and it's given me this whole new perspective and allowed me to use this time to grow my understanding of some of these artists out there that don't maybe get the recognition that they deserve, and learning about them and reaching out to them and bettering myself in the studio and all that sort of stuff. So the opportunity is there. You just have to want to take it. And I can honestly say that I didn't feel that way at the start of lockdown and how it's all gone. And now it's opened up my eyes massively, and I'm proud to say that I was wrong. And I think people streaming and doing all this stuff is fucking brilliant because it's helping so many people out there. And yeah, I mean, fair play to you, because you just bought some decks just for that set, right? I've never owned a set of decks.
Fucking hell. Yeah, right.
Never owned CDJs, and I actually just bought a pair of vinyls, turntables as well. So
do you still have all of your old vinyls?
No, I don't even know. Some of them are in my mate's gaffs. They could be, I don't know where they are, man. Long time ago now. But I have a good few there. But so there'll be more vinyl sets and stuff. So just have to adapt, man. That's all we can do.
Well, we're adapting. Hopefully we've given everyone a bit of an insight into, and we've killed some time as well, which is good for a Friday afternoon.
Killed about 3 days here, man.
I'm just having a few frothies. I've finished a big week in the studio. I've been for my run. It's time for me to retire from the studio and walk 7 meters into my lounge room where I spend most of my time anyway. So having a little bit of a break from everyday life and talking some real shit with you on here has been fun, man.
Good man. So we've gone through a lot of stuff here. I don't think we really touched on half of the stuff I really wanted to discuss, but that's what this podcast is about, man. I don't want to set out. It's not a question answer. I like to have it starts somewhere and then the chat goes wherever it goes. So thank you very much for coming on today for the second episode of Chat. And I just have one more question before you go. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Probably my haircut at this stage. It's getting out of control. But, I mean, do you mean like just in general, like physically, mentally?
Oh, man, come on. You're overthinking this one. Just give a fucking answer. Fucking hell. Your man going all psychological and all.
Oh.
Do you want to know my one before and then you can answer yours?
Yeah.
My feet are rotten.
What have you done to them?
Nothing. I have flat feet. I swear to God, man, I look like a fucking duck when my socks are off.
Really?
Yeah, they're rotten.
Fucking hell. Okay, well, I don't know if I could...
Can I make a suggestion for you? And this will come back to one of your main points from this podcast. One of your main points was control the controllable. Yeah. You said you wanted to change your hair, so let's leave it at that one, will we? Okay. You can control how your hair looks.
I will. All right, I'll make sure I send you a photo for you before your next podcast of my new haircut. Self-done.
Please do, man. That can be the cover image then, yeah?
Perfect. All right, Brizzle, appreciate it, mate.
Cheers, Brandy. Nice one, man. See you
All
later.
right, see ya.
Bye.